Your shadow trails around you, slow as smoke, collecting your secrets. Old folks say a shadow's not just light's child, it's your spirit trailing home. You cannot deceive it, but you can feed it. You can ignore it, but it's better to speak to it sweet, like a lover. Because like a lover, it walks beside you. It knows the truth in your gait. It exhales what you inhale. It is your soul's very desire. So hold your shadow's hand and give it a kiss. Fear not its intimate knowing and embrace your full self. What's up, cousin? Welcome to CoCo Conjure. Here we talk about all things hoodoo, folklore, and spiritual journeys. My goal is to give foundation to the novice and inspiration to the advanced practitioner. If you have not guessed already, my name is CoCo. I've noticed that this month there is an uptick in hoodoo content being pushed to me online, as well as an uptick in cousins seeking out understanding. My most viewed content this month, the month being October of 2025, was my episode called Hoodoo for Beginners. In that episode, I laid out a more practical path to participating in hoodoo. Not necessarily to be a working practitioner who takes on clients, but where to start to have a functional personal practice. And I know why there's an uptick. It's because all of last month, all of October, was Hoodoo Heritage Month. And it did dawn on me to do something super special for Hoodoo Heritage Month. But I didn't. I didn't because that's this entire podcast. So like if you wanted to find something fun and interesting, or something to get you, started into hoodoo, you just had to pick an episode. Just pick an episode. And it sounds like most of you picked Hoodoo for Beginners, which makes sense. So out of curiosity, I went back and I listened to that episode. I even looked at my original prompt and script to see like what I left on the cutting room floor. And honestly, I just wanted to see if there was anything I would add or change. If you've been at this table long enough, cousin, you know that I have a very fringe and nuanced idea of how we can utilize hoodoo or black people magic in our lives. And I realized that the one big difference, I think, between my advice, one of the few differences between my advice and the advice that was being pushed to me through the algorithm, was that I never touched on shadow work. Like not ever, not once. I never touched on it. And shadow work is pushed frequently through all occult spaces online. I don't hear it as much when I'm in in-person spaces, but it's pushed very frequently online. It's often marketed as this necessary deep dive that you must take in order to access your power. It's a salve that will heal your ancestral wounds and break your generational traumas. And though I think shadow work is useful, I definitely did some myself. I think we all did back in 2020, 2021, especially when that one book came out, right? I think shadow work can be useful. I think that online spaces would lead you to believe it's a necessary first step to practice any form of magic, specifically, in our case, black people magic, our magic. But Coco, how can we access our magic and reach our potential if we're drowning? We need to heal. Yeah, I feel you, cousin. I've started this season walking through my mundane sorrows and the stories I allowed, that I co-wrote in my book of life. And yes, 100%, as I continue my journey as a conjure woman, as a root person, as a hoodoo practitioner, I had to untangle myself. I had to face some truths. I had to set some boundaries. I had to dive into and build brick by red brick who I was and who I wanted to be. But cousin, I would argue that you can do all of that without doing shadow work. How many people are surprised that I said that? I don't think anyone's. If you've been here for a while, I do not think you're surprised that I said that. Just like our conversation about karma, shadow work, not native to hoodoo, is a buzzword, and we use it without knowing what's actually being said. So I'm gonna, before we even get to the end, I'm gonna spoil the end. Too long didn't read. Is it necessary? Is it important to untangle yourself, to get right, to know thyself? Yeah, it is. But you don't. Shadow work is being used as a general term for that, but that's not. It's shadow work is more than that, right? It's a very specific way to get right, if you will. Sorry, I spoiled the ending, but yeah, like it's not how it's being pushed. So what is shadow work? WebMD summed it up the easiest, I think. The entry says, shadow work is the process of exploring the unconscious reasons behind your feelings or behaviors, particularly uncomfortable emotions that seem out of character or beyond your control. So if that sounds like therapy, you're correct. Yeah, it's therapy, not magic. It's a method used in therapy and psychology that was born out of the mind of Carl Jung. Notably, Jung studied under Sigmund Freud. We all know who Freud is. Until they had like an ideological split. The Society of Analytical Psychology writes, Jung was openly acknowledged as the heir apparent to Freud's legacy for a while, until the differences in their theoretical positions and personalities became manifest, and they split irreconcilably in 1913. This split capitulated Jung into a personal but ultimately creative crisis, and he emerged from this period of self-exploration and discovery, having developed the concepts that were to become the cornerstones of analytical psychology. So one of Jung's ideas was the shadow self, that underneath the person we present outwardly, there's a part of our psyche that we don't let see the light of day, for better or worse. That could be kinks, prejudices, destructive tendencies, shames we carry. Once we can identify that shadow, we would need to embrace it if we wish to live full and productive lives. You cannot live loudly and fully if you are always hiding an essential but much darker part of yourself. Now, we often want to link this to the mystical. We want to link this to the woo-woo, especially because we're talking shadows. We all, as hoodoos, we heal, we harm, we stand in the light, we live in the shadow, right? We stand at the crossroad, we invite the devil to dance with us. Like, so it's it gives a very woo-woo feel, right? And because, at least based on what I understand here, Jung did not shy away from the woo-woo. He was interested in human experiences as we experience it, not in creating a box for everyone to fit in. So his interest in occult phenomena would actually be viewed as psychological phenomena to be studied, not necessarily as supernatural events that you or I would categorize them as. And Jung's work with the shadow is actually only a slice of the pie that is analytical psychology. There's more to it, like concepts of self, the collective unconscious, the personal unconscious, and the self-regulating psyche. And all of those things are also utilized by magical practitioners. I'm not trying to say they're not. For example, my thought on ancestors is fringe, like, because I don't think it's just a single person walking beside you. I think that the ancestral spirit is the collective unconscious. It's the knowledge that somehow we all tap into, right? That's been cultivated by the people that came before us. You understand? There's more to it than that, but yeah. There's more concepts than that, but I am not a trained Jungian professional. Okay, I'm just not. But like you can look into the show notes if you want to get a more introductory idea to these concepts and these terms and who these people are that I'm talking about. Because I'm only touching the parts of shadow work and analytical psychology that directly impact this advice that we continue to do shadow work, right? So like it's deeper than do your shadow work. Like that's not what they're telling you is you need to go to therapy. That's what they're saying, right? You cannot go out and buy a book. I mean, you can go buy a book that says shadow work, and then do some journaling and follow some prompts, and it might lead you to acceptance of self, inner peace, or whatever. But honestly, it's my opinion that without the guidance of a Jungian practitioner, you might be hurting yourself more than you're helping. There are going to be pieces of your shadow, concepts that come up that you are not ready to admit to or face. So seeing a therapist trained in Jung's technique, if you want to do shadow work, is probably the most beneficial, right? But when you see a face like ours online say, you need to do your shadow work and break those generational curses, I honestly don't think that they're actually talking about Jung's shadow work or going to therapy. I mean, they could be. I don't know these people personally, so they could be. That might be exactly what they mean. But most of the time when I see it said, the context with which they speak leads me to believe that what they're actually saying is you need to get right. And you need to get right. And that has to be the blackest thing you can say to someone. You ain't right and you need to get right. Right. I can literally hear my elders saying it now. Her spirit ain't okay and she needs to get right. She needs to get right immediately if she wants to be somebody and go somewhere. Cause child, I swear she acting just like her daddy with all this booze and in the streets. She acting just like her daddy. She ain't right, and them kids she got ain't gonna be right, and she needs to get right. Like that's what I think these people are saying. I think what they're saying is that in order to access your magic, you have to drop whatever it is that's holding you back to being a better person. Now, can shadow work get you there? Yes, it can. But it's not the only way to do it. Now, I know you know what I'm saying when I say get right, but I'm going to spell it out just to make sure we're all on the same page. Getting right is the act of facing your present truth as it is, accepting your role in it, and striving for betterment by making different choices. By stopping the choices you made before over and over again that led you to sorrow and misery and drowning, and making the decision that from this point forward, I'm going to do better. I'm going to do better because I know better. I'm going to make better choices. That's something that my grandma said back in her episode. It's the last thing she said in that episode, because when you know better, you do better. And when you do better, you get right. Okay. And therapy can help with that for sure. But reflecting on your life, sitting in that crisis, waking up to the idea that you're stuck because you keep making the same choices over and over again that keeps you stuck, is also valid. Like that's an also valid way to get right. You don't have to go to therapy, although some of us do need it. I'm not going to lie, but to just make the decision and then plot your course to do better is all you need to get right. This topic of getting right makes me think of my cousin Marco. He's my actual cousin. My grandmama and his mama are sisters. He's my actual blood cousin. He wrote this book called Finding What's Missing. And in it, he details his, I don't know if he would call it a spiritual journey, but he definitely details his personal struggle with a criminal mindset and chasing money in the streets because that was what was most accessible to him. And at one point, he talks about, being in the streets as being a part of his blood because of who his father was. This mindset was the frame for his life, and it landed him in jail for some pretty heavy charges, including attempted murder. Wrongfully arrested and eventually proven innocent and let go, mostly because the cops that arrested him were very, very dirty. Just the dirtiest cops around in Baltimore. But his criminal activity and chasing fast money by whatever means accessible, it set him up to just live on the edge and be the perfect man to take the fall. Before his final stint in jail, he had an opportunity to do better, to reach higher, to take a harder route. He talks about learning skills. He talks about, how it was more rehab than jail. And they were trying to prepare him to live straight and narrow, to get right. He just chose not to until it was too late. But it almost cost him his life trapped behind bars. My cousin Marco, he has many meditations on what it takes to get right. Giving yourself up to divine timing, learning the lesson and doing better next time, like my grandma said. Understanding that you go with you wherever you go. That's something my mama says to me all the time. You can't outrun yourself. So you have to lay down your problems or they will just follow you. These are all valuable steps if you're trying to get right. Mind you, I don't, maybe shadow work will do these things, but I don't think my cousin Marco ever did a shadow work journal. I think he just meditated on his life and decided that if he was going to do better, he had to be better, right? But I digress. My favorite meditation that cousin Marco writes down, my absolute favorite one, is on the topic of denial. Cousin Marco writes, being in denial is dangerous for a person. They will continue to fault others for what has happened to them and not themselves. Having the courage to admit when you are wrong is one attribute you most want to inherit. As long as you remain in denial for whatever you are up against, whatever place you are in, you shall remain. And if that ain't getting right in the nutshell, the one thing that stops us from getting right, before you can lay down your burdens, before you can learn the lesson, is just straight up denial. It's straight up denial, not taking accountability for your role in the script that you're following. For cousin Marco, it took facing down 25 years behind bars to put his life into perspective. Denial no longer a luxury. He found mental clarity and spiritual strength in God to fight for his innocence. And that's what I think all of us are trying to do, hoodoo or not, right? We're all pushing toward mental and spiritual clarity, so that way we can, in fact, get right. Shadow work, facing the parts of you that you won't allow to see the light of day, doing that in therapy, that can be a very helpful tool, especially done, like I said, with a trained professional, not just the journaling prompts, with a trained professional. But it's not the only way to get right. Maybe you need to do like cousin Marco and write your life down. Put it in perspective. Read back through, reflect on where you were and how you got to where you are. Maybe you got to take a spiritual walkabout, learn different religions, life philosophies, so that way you can see your life from different perspectives. That's what I had to do. And maybe you need to do what my elders would say, and that's get Jesus. My elders would straight up say, you need to get right and you need to get Jesus. I don't know. But what I will say is that the process of getting right should not stop you from reaching for our traditional healing and spiritual techniques. I think that's why I did not include that in my 5 easy steps for hoodoo beginners, right? You don't need to complete therapy and fill out your shadow work journal first and then start your spiritual practice. Honestly, getting right and your spiritual practice should go hand in hand. The more you get right, the more you shed the denial of your role in your life, of how you face your burdens, of the consequences you want to shriek. The more you shed the denial and face your reality, your spiritual aptitude should grow. All right. You've reached the part of the podcast where I scour the internet, find a question or two, and try my best to answer them. This week's 2 questions come from Uncle Leroy's Hoodoo Corner on Facebook. The first one says, hello all. I'm trying to remove some mental blockages in order to make a way for positive changes. I got a black blockbuster candle and was thinking of dressing it with Van Van oil. Does that make sense? Is there another combination of oils that would be better? Like, what should I do? Great question. So I have never used a blockbuster candle in that way. Normally, when I use or do blockbuster work, it's because there's an external force in my way that I need to move to get to my goal, to get what I want. But like I said, your spiritual practice and the need to get right go hand in hand. So if you would like to use the blockbuster candle in this way, why not? I'm not going to tell you no. Van Van oil. Van Van oil, I can only say how I use it. I use Van Van oil as a boost to my personal power. Okay. Luck, abundance, whatever. Like, you can use it for many things, but I use it as a way to reach into my spiritual aptitude, to reach into my personal power. So to me, dressing it with Van Van oil actually makes a lot of sense. I'm sure others will guide you otherwise. I'm trying to think. I also use it as a feed for my mojos because it's a spiritual enhancer. But I'm about to digress. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about mental blockages. So, yeah. Okay, so if you're going to do this, dress your candle with the Van Van. It's not enough to just dress the candle. I think we need to talk about that more when we talk about candle work. It's not enough to dress it with oil, write the petition, and then let the candle burn. You need to work the candle. You need to work the flame. What I mean is, in this case, is you take that same Van Van. I want you to crown yourself with it. When I say crown yourself, you put an X on your head. If you're Christian, it would be a cross, but I'm not Christian. So you put an X on your head. And then you move that Van Van over your scalp, down the middle of your scalp until it reaches the base of your neck. Then you pull your hands around so that way you get Van Van behind your ears. And then you pull it in front of you over your mouth and inhale that vervain, that lemongrass. Which are usually the 2 main components in Van Van. Inhale it. Okay? Do that. I do it 3 times, honestly, but that's because my number is 3. But do that move. Then you light that candle. You sit with yourself with that candle, and over that candle, you speak your problem. Talk to the candle. Talk to the flame. It could be the spirit of the flame itself. It could be, the ancestral spirit that you're calling down. that the smoke of that flame is reaching up to you. I don't know, but you talk to that candle. You tell it your problem. Talk through the issue. You tell it to the candle. And if it's a blockbuster candle, that means it's going to last for like 7 days, 9 days. So you're going to do that for as long as that candle is burning. You don't have to do it all day, every day, but that might be how you start your day. Is you speak that problem. You say it out loud to the candle. Okay. And then by the time it burns out, if you've done it right, you should have an epiphany on the problem, on the block, on how to move the block out the way. There should be an epiphany there. And when you get that epiphany, you write that down. You take your field journal, you get a piece of paper, you write that mess down. You write it down and you carry it with you. Carry that with you. So that way you have a mental block, like the mental blockage is gone, the spiritual blockage is gone, and you have a reminder of that physically on your body, that you no longer carry this with you. That's the only way I could see that working. Again, that's not how I don't think that's the intended use of a blockbuster candle. And honestly, you could do that. Just get a white candle and do that. Like, it doesn't have to be a blockbuster candle, but that's what you got. So that's what I'm working with what you have. We don't go out and grab things. We work with what we got. Okay. I hope that makes sense, what I just said. And you don't need the candle. You can replace the candle with a bowl of water, glass of water. And then when you reach the end of your 7 days, 9 days, whatever it is, you throw that water out, away from you, pour it down the toilet. So that way your blockage moves away from you. I think that's what I would be more likely to do. But yeah, this process should be breaking down the denial, leading to the epiphany. That's what this process should lead to. Okay, last question. Hello. Could someone tell me, how do I go about finding out if there's a curse on my mother's bloodline and what that curse is? Okay, so you're going to want to go to a worker who can divine that for you, who can sit with the cards, their gods, whatever, and work that problem for you and then help you find solution. There are definite signs to generational curses. For example, the third kid in every generation can't have kids. The first male born of a generation dies tragically. Like, those are signs of a generational curse. However, a lot of times what we think is a generational curse is actually just nurture and nature. It's just nurture. It's mostly nurture, but nurture and nature. What we think is a generational curse is just you being taught something. For example, poverty as a generational curse, right? That this is how life is. You are poor. You have to fight to get money. The only way to live well is to maybe get money through illegal means, but you are poor. And your mama was poor, and your grandmama was poor, and her grandmama was poor, all the way back into slavery. Everybody was poor. And this is how life is. And you grew up in lack, and your mind is set to lack, and you tell yourself constantly that you will never have. That's not a generational curse. That's nurturing nature. And the only way to break that, like, if it's not an actual generational curse, it's just nurturing nature. The only way to break that is to face it head on. Is for you to be the change you want to see, and for you to shed the veil of denial, to want better for yourself. I'm not saying that that's going to save, your third cousin. I'm not saying that's going to save your brother, but that could save you. And if you learn better, do better, shed that denial. Your kids, your generation, your nephews that you play a heavy role in their life, your nieces that you play a heavy role in their life, you can be an example for the better. And they can make that choice to follow your example or not. You can teach the ones after you the kind of life worth living. But in order to get there, you have to assess what's gotten you here so far, right? And shed that veil of denial so that way you can push farther. Okay, cousin. Thank you so much for staying with me for as long as you have. Please be sure to like, follow, and subscribe wherever you are listening. But before I let you go, I want to let you know, cousin, that you deserve the world. You deserve good things in your life. You will walk this life, this path we're on, and you'll come across many things you want to tuck deep in the back of your mind. You'll run across situations and consequences that you want to run away from, but you can't. You can't run away. You can't run away because if you want to get right and stay right, you have to face your problems head on. You have to acknowledge your role in the situations you're in, and you have to learn the lesson so that way you can do better now that you know better. You have to shed that veil of denial. You have to walk in light and in shadow. You can do that by doing shadow work with a Jungian professional. You can do that by journaling. You can do that by, sitting in the temple in meditation, by going to a church service, by just allowing yourself to reflect on where you were, who you are, and what it takes to get to where you want to go. All of that can help you get right. But don't let that journey of being your best self stop you from calling for your blessings. Because, cousin, when you call for your blessings, they come to you. I'll see you guys next time.